So we are back. It is the next evening. It is 7:14 p.m. Saturday, January 15th. The snow is a-comin'. Or is it?
Or is it? So let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? As you can see, we're starting off with the same products that we did yesterday.
Same ones.
Same ones. So College of DuPage, the satellite imagery from the National Weather Service. And we have ourselves a 24-frame loop that is showing roughly the last 2 hours. If you remember from yesterday, you saw that not a whole lot of precipitation was coming in since the low was back over the Dallas-Fort Worth area roughly, and the wind flow was still predominantly from Texas and Mexico. Yep. But now that we've moved eastward 24 hours and the low is now situated over eastern Mississippi roughly, you can see that that southerly flow has actually pulled up a lot of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico as the system has gotten stronger and has synced up with the upper level low pressure area. The surface low pressure is deepening. The cold front is sharpening up, so you've got a lot more low level lift as well. Yep. And so that's causing more clouds and precipitation. So you're seeing a lot more green and yellows, etc. on the map than you did yesterday.
On the radar today, there are things.
That's right. And as you can see, since we are 24 hours closer to this weekend's event, the purples and blues, that's additional warnings that the National Weather Service has put out because winter storm watches and warnings are now out to 24 hours, 36 hours, etc. for certain areas. So now you're seeing the whole thing there, and you can also tell that as that low pressure starts to round the corner and starts heading up the East Coast on Sunday, you see more winter weather warnings and watches that start extending further north into New York. Yeah, so let's get into it. So as we can look at, the yellow lines are our isobars, so lines of constant pressure. And so what we're looking at is areas of lowest pressure. And I think we're at 1,008 millibars. And I apologize, I don't have my glasses on. And so I want to stay in focus of the camera without banging my head into the screen.
Debbie, like, what's going on?
Anyways, taking a look, it looks like the lowest pressure is over eastern Mississippi.
Use it the mouse.
Use it the mouse.
Use it the mouse.
Okay, here we go. So here's our area of lowest pressure right here according to the surface analysis, and that coincides with southeastern Mississippi, southwestern Alabama. And if you recall yesterday, looking at some of the forecast models, low pressure was sitting here over North Texas, and it was going to take a direction generally to the east, southeast, into the deep south. And we'll take a look a little bit more later at the forecast models. But we have a very interesting thing, and I wanted to touch upon it yesterday, but we got off onto a different topic. But we'll get to it, and it's going to be pretty interesting, which makes it even more complicated forecasting winter weather.
Another layer.
So
love that.
More things, especially in the southeast U.S. It just makes it complex. So here we are. It looks like it's trucking along at a pretty good clip. And as you can see down further into the Gulf of Mexico, these are thunderstorms as well. And everything is just trucking along to the east, and looks like it's going to make its turn in the next 12 to 24 hours. So here, surface high pressure is well off to our north over Ontario and Quebec, Canada, as well as the northeast United States. Those winds are coming around clockwise in the northern hemisphere, so the winds are coming in from the east and making their way around the low pressure down toward the south. So we've got this cold air damming situation that's occurring down here in the Carolinas.
Yep, talked about that yesterday.
That's right, and especially once this precipitation starts moving in, it's going to reinforce the cold air damming that's in place. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the mid-level of the atmosphere. So we're taking a look at our water vapor imagery. And as we talked about yesterday, we have the whites and the blues indicate more moisture that's in the atmosphere, and the yellows and oranges indicate drier humidity at that range. So we can see low pressure, mid-level low pressure, is centered over northeast Texas and is slowly making its way toward northwest Louisiana. You can see the southerly fetch here is coming in. Winds from the south, southwest are fueling the mid-level moisture coming in off the Gulf of Mexico into the Florida Panhandle, into Alabama, Georgia, and far eastern parts of Mississippi, as well as getting up into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. Looks like that moisture is also starting to stream into the Carolinas, where we have noticed cloudy skies. So it's
even a couple snow flurries around the area as well.
That's right. So low pressure, the mid-level low pressure is lagging back a little bit back over northeast Texas, whereas the surface low is more out in eastern Mississippi. So when things sync up and they start to stack up on top of one another, it gets really strong, and that's where you see really strong amounts of wind and moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, cool dry air wrapping in behind it from Canada and from the northern U.S. So it gets really interesting.
Yes, but it is not currently doing that.
Not yet. We're getting there.
That's where the models will come in a little bit.
That's right. And next we're going to take a look at a different IR. This is the long-wave infrared satellite imagery. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Again, looking at cloud top heights, and that kind of gives us an indication of where the stronger uplift is, as well as if there's any instability. So if there's going to be thunderstorms, and as we can see down over the Gulf of Mexico, it looks like there's some thunderstorms out there, and that's going to lead to an interesting thing, and that is that especially in wintertime situations, if thunderstorms tend to blow up over the Gulf of Mexico, they tend to rob a lot of the moisture transport that goes from the south to the north. So how much moisture is going to be transported out of the Gulf of Mexico up into Georgia and the Carolinas depends a lot upon, is there thunderstorm development in the Gulf of Mexico, and what the dynamics are there.
Do you know what we call these types of thunderstorms that form over the Gulf? We call them snow stealers because it takes all of the moisture and there's no snow.
So now we're going to go ahead and we'll take a look at the Storm Prediction Center. There is our national radar mosaic. Actually, it's been unstable to a degree that they've issued marginal and slight severe storm risks for portions of western Florida, the Panhandle, and the really southern deep south area.
And what do we call these? Snow stealers!
Snow stealers. But we see that there is enough radar returns off to the north so far.
There does appear to be some still coming to North Carolina.
We'll see. Now, part of the thing to consider is as the winds out ahead of the system are coming from the east, they're coming off the Atlantic. So that's bringing in Atlantic moisture, whereas closer to the low, the winds are coming out of the south and you're getting it out of the Gulf of Mexico. So there's going to be some moisture there anyways because of the transport from the Atlantic Ocean and what was already coming in off the Gulf.
We call that snow savers.
All right, so we're going to move on. Here is our surface analysis from the National Weather Service. Again, there's our low pressure system over central and east central Mississippi. We have a cold front going south down through southern Mississippi out into the Gulf of Mexico. We have a warm front, thank you, Kayla, that is extending from a triple point. And that will be a topic of another thing. So,
yes.
But
keep it simple for tonight.
Basically, think about this. At some point, the original low pressure center, as everything is developing and evolving, sometimes the temperature difference on either side, it tends to lose that characteristic and it gets occluded as you kind of see that purple.
A little purple right here.
That's right. So what happens is another low pressure center forms where there's more contrast. And so we call that a triple point, where the occluded front, the warm front, and the cold front meet. And that is an indication of where another low pressure is going to form. Now, one indication that we can look at surface pressure changes.
True.
And where there's rapid surface pressure drops, that's roughly the area where that low pressure is starting to form. And the models were picking up on that a little bit earlier today.
They were, yeah.
That they were showing over southern Alabama was where a low pressure drop was going to take place. So what happens with that? So if you have the original low and then you've got a new low forming,
there's going to be a transfer of energy between the original one and the new one. And that could spell disaster for a snow forecast.
If you were hoping for 12 inches of snow in the Charlotte metro area...
What do we call this? A snow stealer! Because everything's setting up to take away my one chance at snow.
So this is what makes it complicated to forecast winter weather here in the southeast U.S. because you've got a lot of these dynamics going on. The surface low pressure, is it going to reform further south, further east, transfer that energy, thunderstorms blowing up in the Gulf of Mexico, robbing additional energy, getting into the states, low pressure aloft, hanging back and not quite syncing up with it. There's a lot of things that play a factor. Again, how strong is that cold air damming event going to be? Is the cold air going to be in place? Is there going to be ample moisture, et cetera, et cetera? So these are all these factors we have to look at and see what's going on to get the best forecast possible. All right, so here we go. Low pressure here across the deep south. Here are our fronts, and we're expecting, according to the models, low pressure is going to continue to trek along to the east-southeast. And then sometime in the mid-afternoon is where it gets interesting. So forecast seems to be pretty straightforward from now until about noon to 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time on Sunday. And then that's where things really start to get interesting. And you're yawning.
I haven't had coffee in a while.
One of the models we're going to look at, again, from yesterday is our GFS model from the National Weather Service. We'll take a look at that, and then I want to get into one of the mesoscale models. The difference between this model and the mesoscale model. This model is a global model, so its grid spacing and its time resolution there's greater distance and there's greater time segments between the forecast.
Time segments between.
And the mesoscale one is a lot. It comes out quicker in between, and the grid spacing is closer together.
That's right. All right. I'm beating up Kayla over here, so let's just move on.
Almost got slapped.
All right. So here we are overnight Sunday night, and we're going to move this forward. You can see by Sunday morning Eastern time, we've got a swath of snow. Again, just a refresher for those that aren't aware. We have our snow colorization here, our sleet colorization here, freezing rain, and then regular liquid rain here. So we have our snow in this area of western and central North Carolina tomorrow morning. Looks like a small band of sleet and then a bigger band of freezing rain, and then all rain in this area here. And as we advance another 6 hours, because that's the time resolution of the GFS, the snow pushes up into Virginia.
There's no snow left.
I know. And then the sleet goes to northern North Carolina and over the mountains, and we've got more freezing rain here. It looks like rain starts to push in sometime here. So this would be 18Z is 1 p.m. during the afternoon Eastern time. So about noon or so, it's possible even Charlotte might get some rain according to this model.
According to this one.
This model.
It's just a model. It's just a forecast, just a prediction.
Every model tells a different story. It has its own physics, so it tells its own story. And in meteorology, what we do is we look at a bunch of different models, and we kind of take a consensus of the models to kind of give us, a good feel for what's going on. Some models might be way out there. Not that you
the NAM.
not that you toss it out, but you kind of give it, not as much weight as say the other ones that are pretty consistent. But definitely something to keep an eye on, because I don't know how many times some of these other models have been consistent and the NAM has been out there and the NAM nailed it. So you just can't discount it.
How did that? Everything else said this, and then you're over here saying 14 feet of snow, and everybody's saying it's going to rain, and then how did it snow?
Again, it just depends on the storm and the modeling physics of each model. You just have to use your best judgment as to what is going on. All right, so let's take a look. So here we are, early afternoon on Sunday. So I'm going to back up 6 hours. So there's that low. It's going from eastern Alabama into western Georgia. And then we go 6 hours ahead, and now all of a sudden it's off the South Carolina coast. So interesting.
What happened there?
But and then we'll go further ahead, and it moves its way up to the North Carolina-Virginia border 6 hours later, so into the evening,
Jumped 3
Sunday
states.
evening. So it kind of goes in an east, well, as you're looking at, as in an east-southeast. Are you still unbelievable? So it's moving on an east-southeast direction, and then all of a sudden it just makes this jog off to the north. So is that really what's going on is the question. So that leads us right to where we were talking about earlier. So let's take a look at the mesoscale model. And one of them we're going to look at is the NAM.
We are going to look at the NAM. Oh my gosh, an entire line of what in the world?
So let me go back to, okay, so 12, so this is 7 a.m. Sunday morning Eastern time.
Should go storm chasing in the Gulf of Mexico. Look at that.
Yeah, so here we have low pressure, again at the Alabama-Georgia border, and it's over the southern Alabama-Georgia border. So as we advance, and the NAM, again, it's a mesoscale model, so that means that its grid spacing is smaller, so its resolution is better, and also its time resolution is better because it's forecasting out every hour instead of every 6 hours like the GFS. So let's take a look at what happens. So at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we're going to go advance an hour. Okay, so there's 8 o'clock, there's 9 o'clock, there's 10 o'clock, and then something happens, and it looks like the low jumps up to Tennessee.
And all of the snow stops, and then there it is again. This is why.
And then now there's noon. Okay, so the low just went from South Georgia to North Georgia,
Tennessee.
Southeast Tennessee, and then we advance a little bit more.
Where'd it go?
And there it is there. So now we have low pressure by Wilmington, North Carolina here a few hours later. That to me...
Oh,
and
there
then,
it is. It jumps down to here.
Okay, you saw it right there.
Yeah.
There it is. There we go. Right off of... So go from Savannah, Georgia. Go east of Savannah, Georgia. So down here is where we're looking at. Okay, so here's our low up in here. Okay, and just a couple hours later, all of a sudden... we get the low forming down here, and it just goes this in a northerly direction, and the one back here just kind of disappears. So this is what we're talking about.
Yep.
And the other mesoscale models are doing the same thing. So it's been trekking along, going east-southeast, gets to about here, then all of a sudden takes a 90-degree turn, starts drifting up this way, and then all of a sudden, boom! Starts here and then goes like this. This is what we're talking about, and I forget exactly what it is, but it's called a Miller A or a Miller B. I think it's Miller B. Scenario, and that there's research on it. You can look it up, do a Google search on Miller B winter weather scenarios, and that's where your low pressure remember, it started occluding back around this time, and then there was that transfer of energy from, you saw lower pressures that were forming off to the south and east. Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like this is that situation where that original low kind of drifts its way over to the southern Appalachians, and then a new low forms off the southeast coast, and then starts heading in a northeast direction.
So you get all this build up. You're going to build up this low pressure system that's going to bring all this snow, and then bam, throw it out into the ocean.
That's right. So with that, so what happens in that situation? So when you have that energy transfer from the original low to a new low that forms here, a lot of that energy transfers here. So a lot of the uplift, a lot of the moisture that's associated with it, a lot of that transfers to the new low. And as you can see, there's a pretty strong line of thunderstorms that just continues. Yeah. I mean, here's low pressure. It's moving away from down here, but yet even in the South Florida, it's going to be clearing South Florida, and you got that major line that's just pushing right off, but the low pressure is way up in here. It looks like the energy just gets transferred, as you can see in these next couple images here, that a lot of things tend to take shape over South Carolina. Just ignore that one there. Over South Carolina, over North Carolina, and definitely starts to blow up as it gets into North Carolina, Virginia, and that strong line off the coastline, and back off toward the west where the original low was. Things just start to diminish.
Just kind of fall apart.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So the timing, if you go by this model here, looks like we get to This is 15Z, so that would be 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. And then we'll advance to noon, so it looks like freezing rain for this area here, sleet for this area here, and our snow has kind of been diminished to just this area here. We're just talking about the Carolinas and Southern Virginia. And then as we advance even further, we start getting holes that start popping up here. So that's kind of interesting.
What's happening
And
there?
the freezing rain is diminishing here. Then we have an enhancement here. It looks like rain is popping up in the east of the Charlotte metro area, maybe eastern suburbs of Charlotte. Again, further on in the afternoon, we get diminishing freezing rain pockets and more rain according to this model here. And then what we have is the dry slot.
Yes.
So a dry slot tends to happen when the dry air off to the west, the north and west, starts wrapping around that low pressure center and actually starts to come in behind it and starts wrapping into the main part of the storm system. And there's no precipitation here. Sometimes clouds can actually start to thin out. You might even see some sunshine. So when that dry slot starts to form, that'll also cut off your precipitation totals, making the forecast even trickier. So this is a classic example of everything. You got your winter weather, you got snow, sleet, freezing rain, thunderstorms, storms blowing up in the Gulf, a Miller B situation where your main low pressure is occluding and now it's transferring its energy to another low pressure center that's starting to form. And there's more to that. We won't get into all those details. It can be a little complicated, but to stay in the scope of what we're talking about. And then you have a dry slot that's going to punch in and dry things out.
What else could happen at this point? I mean, there's nothing left except, earthquake? Perhaps a volcanic eruption? Oh, we had one of those. Not in the U.S., but...
They had a tsunami. They had a tsunami. Maybe it was part of the volcano from Tonga, and I think Hawaii and the western U.S. has had a tsunami. So no tsunami on the east coast of the United States at this point, but we're hitting everything.
It might make its way over. Everything else has happened.
So the other models tend to point to the same thing. If we do the AR2, some of them might not be as pronounced, but you can see. There's a low there over South Georgia, and then that dry slot tends to punch up through South Carolina into North Carolina. Some of them use a Miller B scenario, some don't. It just depends on their modeling physics. Here's another model, the FV3 high res. Again, dry slot punching through. So just very, very interesting, complex scenario.
Yeah, forecast from yesterday is kind of already a bust.
Yeah, we're not going to get as much snow, which we knew.
We did know that there wasn't going to be a lot, but some of us were hopeful in this house and maybe a little pessimistic with the all freezing rain. But...
And one thing I wanted to point out, and I'll just go back to the NAM, is you see the low pressure center. Remember, we talked about depending on where that low pressure was going to track. If it tracked further west, we were going to get more of a warm nose and get more of a precipitation changeover. If it pushed offshore more of that cold air would be in place. It would pull more cold air down from the north, and it would stay more frozen. It looks like with the later model runs, they're forecasting for that low to be further to the west, and thus the ice and sleet is pushed further to the west and longer periods of it. The only saving grace that I see here is that a dry slot will cut off that freezing rain potential quicker than if that dry slot wasn't there. The warm nose, we're going to take a look again at the NAM, and we are starting at 7 a.m. Sunday morning. We're starting to see right in here. Here's our warm nose. Let's take a look. Yeah, there it is. There it is. And it looks even warmer than what it was yesterday.
It's completely green. It's covering all of the Carolinas.
Here's our color scale here. So 0, so going to green, we're talking above freezing, and this is at 850 millibars, which is 5,000 feet. And so as we have shown yesterday, if I click in through here, you will look at our sounding, and you will see that it is cold and it's saturated now because the temperature and dew point are together, and we cross the 0 degrees C isotherm here, so it's going to get above freezing for a little while, and then we get below freezing, and that's where we fall as freezing rain, because it looks like the surface temperature will be 27 at this point, but you've got
quite a substantial
some liquid here.
Warm nose there.
Yep. Frozen to liquid, and then just a short distance to hit the surface, so it could remain super cooled as it hits, giving us freezing rain. So, not promising for snow at all for our backyard. Our backyard. That's what we're forecasting for.
Yes.
So we'll have to see how that transpires. But as of right now, my 4 to 8 inches, I've trimmed it down to 2 to 4 at this point. And that would be total storm precip. I think it might be 1 to 3 of snow. And I'm looking at
all ice.
And then the rest, we're looking at probably an inch or so of sleet, and then about 1/4 of an inch of freezing rain for our area.
North of Charlotte.
That's right. And tomorrow we're going to go through the whole storm. We're going to be vlogging that too and including that in the video, and then we'll show you what we've got. So we're forecasting pinpoint for our backyard. This isn't a forecast for this whole storm.
North Carolina.
But that's what I think. We've trimming that snow down because that warm nose is coming in, and there's more time of the warmer air being here. So trimming back that snow forecast, upping the sleet forecast, upping the freezing rain forecast.
But you know, anything could happen.
That's right.
Still, this is North Carolina, so nothing is out of the question.
That's right.
But we're just going to have to see how tomorrow goes.
That's right. There you go. There you have it once again. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and going through some of these products with us. And hopefully we didn't bore you too much. I know Kayla was probably a little bored there for a little bit. She was yawning a lot.
No, that's not
I tend to bore people a lot.
You're very interesting. You're great.
She needs coffee.
It's been a day. It's been a week, you know.
It has been. And this isn't a straightforward forecast. So, you know, a lot of brain power goes into this as to what's going on, looking at all the things. And so now we are going to head to the backyard and put our snowboard out. And that way we can get ourselves a good measurement for when the storm is over.
Yeah. All right. We are putting our snowboard out for tomorrow's ice or snowstorm or whatever it decides to be. We are away from the houses and all that stuff, so good spot. Oh, Dad is actually snowboarding. What a legend.